Beneath the surface of every nation lies a deeper history, one that rarely makes it into textbooks, one that breathes quietly beneath the monuments and the myths. America is no different. The stories most people carry about this country are often polished versions of something far more complicated, far more human, and far more extraordinary. As the sun rises slowly over the White House, casting long golden shadows across the South Lawn, and as the pages of centuries-old documents curl at their edges in the reading rooms of the Library of Congress, a different America begins to emerge. One shaped not just by battles and declarations, but by sheep grazing on presidential grounds, by invisible ink drying on secret letters, and by a quiet act of generosity from a people whose contribution history nearly forgot. These are not legends. These are documented truths, verified by archives, authenticated by scholars, preserved in the very institutions built to protect the memory of this nation. By the spring of 1918, the United States had entered the First World War, and the pressure to conserve resources had reached even the most symbolic address in the country, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. President Woodrow Wilson, facing a nation stretched thin by the demands of war, made a decision that would have seemed unthinkable in any other era. He brought sheep to the White House. Approximately 48 Shropshire sheep were introduced to the South Lawn, replacing the groundskeeping staff who had been maintaining the grass. The reasoning was entirely practical. With so many men serving overseas or redirected toward wartime production, labor was scarce and expensive. The sheep solved two problems at once. They kept the lawn trimmed without requiring human effort, and they became a visible symbol of wartime sacrifice and shared responsibility. Photographs from the period, preserved in the National Archives, show the animals grazing calmly across the manicured grounds, seemingly indifferent to the weight of history surrounding them. President Wilson, dressed in the formal attire of the era, was occasionally seen observing the unusual arrangement from the White House portico. Groundskeepers with period-correct tools moved quietly around the animals, ensuring the grounds remained presentable for official functions. But the story did not end with lawn maintenance. When the sheep were shorn, their wool was collected and auctioned off by the American Red Cross. The proceeds went directly toward supporting the war effort. Vintage newspapers of the time reported on the auctions with a mixture of civic pride and gentle amusement. In total, the wool raised nearly $100,000, a remarkable sum for the period, and a testament to how a simple, practical idea could carry genuine patriotic weight. The sheep remained on the White House grounds for several years, a living reminder that even the most powerful office in the world was not exempt from the demands of a nation at war. While the battles of the American Revolution are well documented, the intelligence war that ran beneath them has only recently received the recognition it deserves. In 1778, facing a British military that occupied New York City and commanded superior resources, General George Washington authorized the creation of what would become one of the most sophisticated espionage networks of the 18th century, the Culper Spy Ring. Named after a pseudonym chosen by Washington himself, the network operated in the shadows of British-occupied Manhattan and Long Island. Wet cobblestone streets, lantern-lit alleyways, and the constant presence of British soldiers made every exchange of information a potentially fatal act. Couriers moved through the night carrying intelligence written in invisible ink, a chemical compound that appeared blank to the naked eye and only revealed its contents when treated with a specific reagent. The Culper codebook assigned numbers to names, places, and common words, turning ordinary correspondence into impenetrable cipher. Newspaper advertisements were used to carry hidden messages, their coded language invisible to anyone not holding the key. Washington studied these reports by candlelight inside his headquarters, piecing together the movements and intentions of British commanders. The Ring's intelligence contributed directly to several critical American victories and helped expose the treachery of Benedict Arnold, whose secret meetings with British Major John Andre were eventually uncovered through the network's surveillance. Among the ring's operatives was a figure known only as Agent 355, a woman whose true identity has never been conclusively established. Historical scholarship acknowledges her existence and her contribution, but her face and name remain unknown. She moves through this history as a shadow, present, essential, and deliberately unnamed. Her story is a reminder that the most consequential acts of courage are sometimes the ones that leave the fewest traces. The winter of 1777 to 1778 at Valley Forge is remembered as one of the darkest chapters in the story of the Continental Army. Approximately 12,000 soldiers endured brutal cold, starvation, and disease in a makeshift encampment of log huts outside Philadelphia. Men wrapped their feet in rags. Horses died in the snow. Morale collapsed under the weight of suffering that seemed to have no end. What is far less remembered is who helped save them. The Oneida Nation, one of the 6 nations of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, made the deliberate and costly decision to ally with the American cause. In the winter of 1778, a delegation of Oneida men and women traveled to Valley Forge, carrying approximately 600 bushels of white corn, a food source that the starving soldiers did not know how to prepare. Among them was a woman named Polly Cooper, whose role in what followed has been preserved in Oneida oral tradition and acknowledged by historians. She did not simply deliver the corn and leave. She stayed. She taught the soldiers how to prepare the white corn properly, how to hull it, how to cook it, how to make it nourishing rather than harmful. Close to an open fire, with the snow still heavy on the surrounding hills, she demonstrated traditional preparation methods that transformed a raw ingredient into sustenance. Washington reportedly watched as his men received warm meals for the first time in weeks. The golden light of a winter sunrise, breaking slowly through the clouds above Valley Forge, carried something it had not carried in months: the possibility of survival. Polly Cooper refused payment for the corn. The women of the Continental Army, moved by her generosity, offered to buy her a shawl. She accepted it as a gesture of friendship. That shawl, according to Oneida tradition, has been preserved and passed down through generations as a symbol of the alliance and the sacrifice it represented. The Oneida contribution at Valley Forge is not a footnote. It is a turning point, one that helped keep the Continental Army alive long enough to fight on toward independence. History is not a fixed object. It is a living record, constantly being recovered, re-examined, and restored. The sheep on the White House lawn, the invisible ink drying on a courier's letter in occupied New York, the smell of white corn cooking over a fire in the snow at Valley Forge. These are not minor details. They are the texture of a nation's true story. They remind us that the people who shaped this country were not mythological figures operating in a world of clean symbols and simple choices. They were human beings making difficult decisions under impossible circumstances, often aided by unlikely allies and forgotten heroes. The monuments still stand. The documents still exist. And somewhere between the marble and the archive, the real America waits. More remarkable, more complicated, and more worth knowing than any myth we have ever told about it.